on the voice side of the house. And most, they have pagers and then they have phones, so they're really pretty well connected all day. We then, again, have integrated the nurse call and paging to the units where the unit clerk sits at the desk, and when the patient pages from her or his room, she will dispatch that nurse with a page directly to with a message. And so there's a standard list of messages, and they can send 20 messages. So the nurse not only gets the communication, but she knows, or he knows pretty much what they're going to have to do when they get to the room. We've, interestingly enough, and it's I don't know if this conference had anything to do with this, but we just discovered a problem with this nurse call and paging, and it does involve our paging and some of our mobile computers. And I think we've narrowed it down to the cellular on chip, and it's really along the lines of what Tom said. You have to get in with, you have to make sure all these devices are checked out by Biomed, because as you're putting them on the units, they really are filling up the airspace. And even though the devices are checked out and the vendor has the FCC approval to sell and market that device for use in a medical environment, you still get some spurious noise. And in some cases, I think we've nailed it down to where their Pentium chip systems have less noise than their Celeron chip systems. So we basically it's not a big deal, but when you get away from the transmitter, the pages don't get through. So we can cope with what we're coping with it. It's not anything that's stopping us, but it is something that is real. That's a real interference. In terms of the monitoring, the Arrhythmia Response Center is a big win for St. Mary's. It definitely was a technology project on the clinical side that had our ROI. It took a while to get there. If you're familiar with HP Veridia, they basically sold a system 4 years ago that they didn't deliver till a year ago. So in the meantime, we had basically old style monitoring where each unit was still had a telemetry tech on the floor. But it really is working well now, and again, it just piggybacks on our nurse call paging system, where we really have a nice tight environment there. And then in terms of clinical monitoring, the other thing we're doing wireless is fetal telemetry, where we've got a couple monitors in the wound civilian where if the mother wants to get them to walk around, they can still have the strip online at the nursing station. The care manager system, again, a lot of the same things that Dean went over. We can go on and expand on that if you have any questions. The redundancy is a real good feature of the wireless. We've got the Space Labs fetal monitor, archive surveillance, and actually liquid delivery charting system in our women's pavilion, for instance, and those are all wired PCs in every room. If for some reason that PC goes down or ends and blue screens, they can walk out into the hallway and bring in a wireless card and actually continue to chart and manage the patient, so we don't end up in a critical situation with a computer that's involved directly in patient care, causing a delay or some interruption in that care. So it really is a wonderful thing to have on the floor from that redundancy perspective. And as you really, I think, it's an old lesson, I think we all know it, but as you get more and more information online, you really need more and more computers. So you really have to, take great care to make sure you plan for enough computers and the redundancy as well. The bedside registration, we're sort of moving forward with that, and FITS is first. The technology is there, but our procedural, the procedural aspects of that project are not going very well, mainly through the admissions area. Just a lot of complexity that you might not anticipate, and the printing is one of those where you're mobile, but you still you don't have a printer on those devices, so you need to know where that face sheet and the armband and any of the admission documentation is going to print, and sometimes you still have to walk back around and get that from the printer. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of little issues, but there are just procedural issues, and we're working through those, and we'll have that online by the end of the year. But the technology, once you're mobile, so they can really go anywhere on any unit and register a patient. They can run Care Manager or start from anywhere. In terms of radio, again, security, biomed, transport, engineering, all those folks use radio. We've had some interesting issues, though, where like Burger King put in a drive-through, and we saw some interference on some of our older, I think the system's been replaced, but this was like 5 years ago. We saw some interference on our monitoring, our patient monitoring at the time. And then we put in a big antenna. One of our biomed guys is really an amateur or maybe professional, just in the radio. And he's gotten them to put this big transmitter on our building, and we ended up beaming our radio signals and interfering with hotels downtown in Knoxville. But again, we were right because we had the license for that band, but they had to go change their frequencies. Choosing wireless, we chose wireless, and again, just not to just be redundant on anything that he went through, because almost all of those slides fit for us here in Knoxville and St. Mary's. But HBO, if you're familiar with HBO, if you get too far from HBO standards, sometimes you get burned, but if you get too close to their standards, sometimes you get burned. So we basically, in this case, sort of acquiesced and really didn't do a selection. They wanted to use Proxim, so we went out and got Proxim. I think at this point in time, the lesson learned is you can do anything you want. I mean, it's all Ethernet and it's all standards-based. We bought the Proxim Rangeland 2 right probably at the end of its, maybe at where it was at the end of the cycle where it was one of the premier products, because it is a 2 megabit version, and it wasn't the standard at that time. It hasn't gotten our way. One of the concerns we have, if I can, our big concern, and I think I get into this, is this: we want to get these kind of devices wireless online, and so until that Proxim stops us from being able to plug something into a device like this and get it online, then it really won't cause any problems. I don't expect it to cause a problem, but that's what we're looking out for. If we were selecting wireless today, we would make sure that the best device available for Med and IV administration, which is something going to be along this big or maybe a little bigger or smaller, but something smaller than a PC would work with that wireless. So that's probably the biggest design criteria I would put on a wireless selection at this point in time. The issue, and again, just one of the pitfalls, we've got 1,000 PCs at St. Mary's in Knoxville, and they're all managed. They're all electronically managed, software distribution. They all have the same image, and we committed to doing that with the wireless as well. And it does cause us a little bit of grief when we have to do a big upgrade, because it does take a little while to download those software packages across that wireless network. We actually have a nurse that makes rounds once a week, just sort of kicking the tires on all the parts, making sure they're at the right rev levels. And we are in the process of converting that to thin client. So once we get those on thin client, we'll have a highly managed environment, but we won't have the overhead of the fat clients. We've got 2 different devices, the Tremont and the Toshiba cards. So we sort of split our risk there, because a lot of things that you're going to run into, or that we run into, is ergonomics are really big at St. Mary's. And we've had the ergonomic experts come in and look at both of these, and they pass muster. The Tremont is more designed for standing, and the Toshiba is more designed for really sitting. And the nurses really don't chart in the room. We don't know that we'll ever get them to chart in the room other than meds and IVs, that specific task at that point of administration. We're not going to fight that battle. They use Care Manager. They use it well. We've had a tremendous amount of success, especially since we put Care Manager orders on. But we're not going to wrestle them into the room with devices. And then in terms of the network, you just have to have plenty of access points. And we've got, like I say, I think it's 40 or 50 access points, because St. Mary's is an older campus and is notorious. We learned our lessons on a lot of biomed systems. You just need a lot of access points at St. Mary's. Now, if you have a nice new building that's designed properly and doesn't have all the old tile walls, you might need less. Talked about the Tremont and the Toshibas. Again, we're moving more and more to the thin client on the wireless devices. And that really pretty much wraps it up. In terms of physicians, one of the things that we're doing is we're sort of trying to rethink how we measure physicians' uses of our systems. And we don't have a lot of community doctors practicing at St. Mary's. 70 to 80% of our admissions come from one internal medical group. And then they have hired their own hospitalists to take care of those patients when they're in the hospital. almost all of those physicians are